2-minute warning. Give folks a chance to transition from lunch and whatnot, and I'll say hi in about 2 more minutes. Okay? See you shortly.
That's our visual. I thought you were going to We can recreate it. I wonder if it's how they oh, so that. Oh, that was it. Oh, that's good. Are you sure?
Okay, folks. How was lunch?
Good.
Yeah. That's always that's the hard part of the conference, right? After lunchtime, right? You know, I got a strategy for it though. It's in my cup. It's called a red eye. Y'all know red eye? I don't know if you know this red eye. It's coffee with some ground up Ritalin. So I can assure you we're gonna have a very focused session together, right? Maybe we're running tired, but in all seriousness, I'm really excited to be able to spend this time with you. You know, most of the time I spend is kind of in like what we did this morning, and it's a little impersonal. So what I thought I would do with this time was really turn it over to you and to hear your questions, hear your challenges, and in the spirit of inquiry-based learning, hear what you're struggling with. And when it's appropriate, offer my 2 cents, things I've learned as an individual, as a professional, but where it's also appropriate, draw from the wisdom of the people sitting around this room here, because we have a lot to learn from each other. And so that's kind of how I like to play that. So let me give you a sense of how I'd like to use the time, if that's all right. I have to leave on the early side of this. I need to be really in my car at 3:15 to make a flight so my wife doesn't divorce me. So I know you all will be respectful of that. I want to make sure that I leave some time at the end of the session for us to be able to dialogue one-on-one, because I know that there were some sensitive issues brought up, and sometimes folks like to carve out a little time to talk about it in a more personal way. So I'm going to leave about half an hour at the end of our session for that, for people who want to share some things that they're not comfortable sharing in the group, which I respect. So that means that we have from now until, I don't know, let's just call it 2:30, 2:45, to dive into your questions and your comments and your ideas. So that's kind of how we're going to roll. Does that sound all right, y'all?
Good.
Okay, good. One caveat is, as we dive into a dialogue and we engage with each other's ideas and thoughts, hey, don't be shy about pushing back. You know, like the gentleman who prefaced the remarks around personalized learning, I think he was right on when he said change is hard. You know, and individuals as educators, some of us weren't supported in our own education to think about these ideas. I think we have to be honest that some of the incentive systems, the things that teachers are rewarded for every day, aren't aligned with some of these innovative ideas. And it's okay to say, you know what, like, I'm wrestling with this, I'm struggling with it. It's okay to say that. You know, it's okay to disagree with me. I'll be honest. I don't even agree with everything I said this morning. So, you know, what fun would that be? You know, like to not say things that are a little controversial. So that's all a long-winded way to say, in the spirit of true discourse, let's learn from each other. Let's be honest. Let's talk about the things we're struggling with, places we need help, and let's go for it. From a process perspective, what I said this morning goes again. You can pace back and forth. You can be rocking your laptop. You can leave the room. You do whatever you need to do. I will ask folks, not necessarily to raise their hand. You're welcome to blurt out questions. It's all good with me. I will reiterate the question though, because I know we got a big old kind of room here, and I'll say it out loud so everyone can be on the same page. So with that said, we got about, I don't know, 45 minutes to an hour of some of your questions and your comments. And who wants to start us off up front? Go for it.
I just wanted to know how, how did you get to Brown?
Yeah.
You know, I don't think you've told us.
Yeah. Okay. And what's your name?
I'm Helen Perez, and I'm a board member at LPS.
Right on. And did you say your name was Kelly?
Yes.
And what are LPS schools?
I'm sorry, Littleton Public School.
Oh, right on. Yeah, doing good work there. And you're a school board member, so you're a parent and you're actively engaged in trying to build a quality district that helps folks. Love it. Appreciate you being here. Appreciate the role you play. So let me reiterate Kelly's question. Kelly asked me, how did I make it to Brown? And I'm reading between the lines here, but did they make a mistake? Right?
I'm not saying that.
I know you're not. I'm just giving you a hard time. But that's an important, valid question. And let me talk about that question on a few different registers. Let me talk about it both from just a pure factual perspective, like what were my factual journey to Brown, and then I want to talk about it at a little bit more of a philosophical level around how we think about what launches successful adult life. So let me just fill in some blanks on the most personal level. I left school in 6th grade, as I mentioned to y'all. Had a plan for suicide. I want to come back later if people are interested in what helped me through that particular moment of time, because I'm passionate about youth mental health. I'm sure you all know that there's a crisis going on as it pertains to youth mental health right now in America, with rising and escalating rates of depression and anxiety and suicide. Stanford, Palo Alto High School, literally right now, Palo Alto near Stanford University has 24-hour supervision of the railroad tracks that go through town because of a spike in young people taking their own life. So I want to come back to that issue because it's something that I think we need to dive into and be honest about. So I left school when I was 12, about a year and a half in and out of a variety of different settings, and then I moved to Colorado. I moved here in 9th grade, middle of my 9th grade year. I moved to Green Mountain, which is a school in Lakewood, and I had a little bit of a do-over to some extent. I had a number of very innovative teachers who I alluded to just briefly, but it's always important to say their names again, over and over again. Guidance counselor named Mr. Towner, AP English teacher named Mr. Starkey, who were really innovators. No other way to say it, they were working with obviously antiquated technical tools, as I talked about this morning, but it didn't matter. They were there thinking about how do you think differently about learning. And it gave me a little inkling that I wasn't the stupid, crazy, lazy kid. But like many experiences for kids like me, classrooms that accommodate and think differently about learning, I'm successful. Classrooms that don't, I fail. And I'm sure you've seen that. You'll see the spike in kids' GPAs. You'll see it in the different report cards. How can this kid get an A and an F? Well, it's the same kid, The difference is what's happening in the classroom, So I was a student who had that story. Thriving when people were thinking differently about learning, struggling when folks were caught in an old school model and way. And I went through high school. I went through Green Mountain as a soccer player, and was lucky enough, and I'll just be very frank about it, was lucky enough to have gotten into my first university as a result of soccer, playing ball. D1 school, went there to be an athlete, and things changed for me there. They changed for me for a few reasons, and I think these are important reasons for us as a community who cares about kids who learn differently. Number one, I started to hit what researchers are calling my neurological stride, right? When I was growing up, my mom used to read to me a book called Leo the Late Bloomer. Does anyone know that book? Yeah. If you don't know that book, let me share it with you real quick because it ain't complicated, okay? It's a children's book. It's a children's book, and it's about a lion named Leo. My middle boy is Leo, named after Leo the Late Bloomer. Is a lion that can't do things. Can't eat, can't tie its shoes. I don't know why lions wear shoes, but that's a different story. Can't read, can't write like all the other animals in the forest. And ends up blooming later in life. And my mom used to read that book to me. It's for like 4-year-olds every day until I was 18 years old, okay? Because the message that my mom gave me was, you'll hit your stride. And I have to be honest, my mom, as many moms before her and to this day, my mom was kind of derided for that message. You know, oh, that's too optimistic, you know, like you're just, you know, punting the can down the road, and blah, 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 blah. I'm not against the intervention per se, but my mom has been proved right by research about the brain, which is that people have different developmental continuums. And many young people with learning challenges are late bloomers. I quote from a research study from McGill University and the National Institute of Health. And it's a research study about the ADHD neurology. And the quote from that study is, ADHD is not a deficit, but a maturation delay. It's a late blooming brain. And that's a very hopeful thing to know and to hold on to. It also has real implications for our work as a community of people trying to leverage technology for change. We heard the word today a lot, and I'm sure you all are well versed in it, of competency-based education, right? So it's not about your seat time, right? It's not about whether you put in, you know, 4 or 5 hours in a class. It's about the skills that you can master and develop. And the old model would not let kids move on, would hold them back. There was no flexibility in the schedule in which young people could engage in a task. But a competency-based model holds out the potential that I can always circle back to that competency. If I'm struggling with reading, we don't have to hold up my social science education. We don't have to hold up my science education. We don't have to stop everything just because of a deficit in that one competency area. And that is a renaissance for late bloomers. You hear that so much with young people with math and literacy in particular. You know, one of the paradoxes of people who learn outside the lines is they may not be able to do addition and subtraction, but they can do geometry, right? They're asynchronistic learners. They don't go A, B, C, D to do things. And competency-based education holds open a pathway for them. So that wasn't something available to me in a formal way. But in all of my work with districts and individual young people, with Juan, who I talked about this morning, we're working through competency-based platforms to allow people more flexibility. So going back to my journey to Brown, I hit my neurological stride in my late teens, early 20s. Things started to click at LMU. On top of that, I had a great group of teachers who inspired me. And on top of that, I found myself paradoxically in an academic environment that was far more accommodating than traditional K-12 education. You know, colleges are compelled by law, as are K-12 schools, to accommodate learning differences. There's more choice in higher education. There's more project-based learning in higher education. There's more purpose-based learning in higher education than there often is in K-12 systems. That's a generalization, but nonetheless, I find that to be true. So I had this renaissance there. And I decided, with the support of Father Young, he's the guy who gave me the vision for it, to transfer to Brown. And so I transferred to Brown. Now that's a very important part of my story, because when you transfer, guess what? 2-year or 4-year college, whether you transfer from Red Rocks Community College to CSU or CSU to Harvard, guess what they do not look at anymore? High school grades, and guess what else? SAT scores and ACT scores. They look at your performance at your previous academic institution. Now look, I gotta be clear about that. You know, I had almost a 4.0. You gotta do well in that college, but if you do well, you get a do-over, which is a great thing. But that's not what we tell young people, is it? You know, what we tell young people is 9th grade determines your entire life, you know? It's all over after that, you know? We don't talk enough about the fact that there are now multiple avenues to launching a successful adult life. And we need to be transparent about those avenues. I take real issue with a culture and then subsequently a academic alignment to the idea that the only successful is if you have a BA, you know? Like it's a college or die mentality, you know? And if you don't have that BA, you know, something's wrong with you, right? And you're dumb, you're a failure, and all of our practices in many high schools around America have been reverse engineered for a very narrow academic experience, right? And that flies in the face of a couple important trends that you all should be aware of, right? One, that BAs, people leaving bachelor degree programs, they have the highest personal debt in the history of personal debt, right? Higher education debt is the highest form of debt in America. Just hit $1 trillion more than credit card and home and auto loan combined. It's an amazing thing, right? Other thing you should know is that 7 out of the 10 fastest growing jobs in America, 7 out of 10, do not require a BA. 7 out of 10. They require something after school, right? They require a credential or something along those lines, or certificate, but they don't require a traditional BA or bachelor's degree. Google, right? Probably the archetype of employers in the new economy. Google's workforce now, 20% don't have bachelor's degrees. 20%! They see the bachelor degree as an irrelevant piece of paper that doesn't align with competencies and real skills, and they're thinking differently about how they source talent. And that's a trend that's just going to keep growing and growing and growing. So you layer onto that the other trend that I talked about this morning, which is people being able to piece together these individualized learning experiences that are credentialed within one place. You have the recipe for people building those personalized platforms and pathways in their own life. And that's a powerful thing. Juan did it. You know, if I was going back to school now, that's what I would do. I would piece together learning experiences from the multitude of sources that are out there, portfolioize them in one place, and that's how I would build my education moving forward. So there's so many options for people other than, you know what, you gotta go to college or you are a failure. So that's my journey to Brown. You know, I hung in there, hit my stride, found myself in a better environment that was more accommodating and innovative than I was before. And I took advantage of that great back door called transfer, right? But there's also other options for young folks. As a board member in particular, I think it's an opportunity for you and other advocates here who care about education to be having a nuanced and balanced conversation about what does it mean to have curriculum in high school that's not just aligned to higher education. You know, in California, where I live, funding for career technical education, CTE, has been cut by 70% since 2000. CTE was often a place where the dumb kid felt smart, right? It was often a place where the kid who didn't come to school, he missed every class but that class, right? It was the place where kids were doing things and getting skills that could help them launch a successful adult life. In this race to only go to college, many districts have dismantled those other opportunities, and we should fight to get them back. Okay, appreciate the question. Thank you. Right there.
How did you learn to read at the age of 12? Like what strategies or was there a teacher or why did it click at 12?
Yeah, let's talk about that. And what's your name?
My name is Lori.
Lori, right on. Where are you from? Where in the state?
Sterling, Northwest Corner.
Yeah, we talked about that earlier today. Appreciate you being here, Lori. Thanks so much. So Lori, you use a nice outside voice there. I appreciate that. It's your teacher voice. I've been accused of having the Irish whisper. I don't know if you've ever heard that one before, right? Which is an insult, frankly. But you know, quick cuddly disguise. Let me talk about reading for a second, because I think there are some important lessons for literacy instruction writ large, and then particularly a role for technology and innovation. So reading for me was facilitated by three things, okay? By three things. First, and it's something I said before, but I'm going to say it again in this context. I had some people in my life who weren't yet supported by digital platforms, who believed I was a late bloomer when it came to reading, and were sensitive enough, nuanced enough to create space for that in their classroom. And I have to say, that's a pretty bold and innovative thing for a first, second, third grade teacher to do. Because right now we're living in the age of content creep, aren't we? Y'all know content creep, right? We take the 12th grade curriculum and we make it for 9th graders. And then we take the 9th grade expectations and we make it for 3rd graders. And then we take the 3rd grade expectations and curriculum and we make it for fetuses, right? And then the politicians pat themselves on the back and they say, aren't we being rigorous, right? Well, they're not being rigorous. They're just being developmentally inappropriate, right? You know, I showed up to my kindergarten roundup in my neighborhood in Santa Monica where I live. You know, they opened the doors for potential kindergarten parents with my boy Max. He was getting ready for kindergarten. He's in 3rd grade now. And the principal told the group of parents gathered that a kindergarten was the new 3rd grade, right? And the expectations should be set as such. And look, that wasn't her fault, you know. She was responding to policy that was coming at the state level, not even the superintendent's fault. But nonetheless, we are in an age of content creep. And reading is probably the tip of that spear, meaning the expectations around reading are getting to the point of being developmentally inappropriate. We know from research that young people who experience reading failure become worse readers. So if they're pushed to read early, they fail early, it's a vicious downward cycle. And what we also know from reading research is that institutions or countries that respect the research around reading readiness have the highest academic outcomes. Look at Finland, right? Finland has the highest international test scores out of any country in the world. China, Singapore, Finland. And they do not do direct instruction on reading until kids are 8 or 9 years old. That's when they start direct instruction. Yet, there are many states, I don't know if Colorado is one, where if you are not reading by 3rd grade, you are statutorily required to hold kids back, right? That's a movement that's happening. And it's in violation of the research. So I have people in my life who respected the late blooming, were nuanced enough to support it, intervene where it's appropriate, but not make too big of a deal out of it. And I think that you all are, again, on the verge with competency-based platforms to be able to do something competent. Second thing that helped me as a reader, and I talked about it this morning, but I'll be more clear about it here, is the ability to have speech-to-text or text-to-speech accommodations, right? I'm a kid who's going to be bored out of his mind doing phonics exercises all day long, right? You know, to go all day long, like that ain't learning for me, you know? Like, there's a place for it. I don't get me wrong, I believe deeply, especially with young people who have reading challenges, that we gotta teach them the ways to do code language. I got that. But I also need to engage with text. I need to engage with things that are at my level, that inspire me, that I'm interested in, that stretch me. And listening from text to speech is one of the best ways to do that. Same goes with the writing, you know. I'm sure you all have seen kids in your time as professionals who, when you ask them to tell you about their ideas, you're there for 3 hours, right? You ask them to write their ideas, and what comes out? Nothing, right? C-spot run. And that's an opportunity to build my fluency as a writer in a very different way. work on the writing in a traditional way? Absolutely, but let's also dictate, right? I mean, I'm writing a new book. I'm writing this book called The End of School, Dispatches from the Front Lines of the Learning Revolution. Really trying to elevate and share the stories of the good work that people like you are doing to reimagine education in the 21st century. And I've dictated half of that book on my phone right now, in my pocket, right? You push that little speaker button, you dictate, you correct it, and you're good to go. That is the 21st century for so many young people. It gets their mind on the page. It helps them learn how to think clearly. So we got to walk and chew gum. We got to do the remediation, but we got to do the technology-based accommodation at the same time. I had people in my life who did that. Mr. R, this beautiful teacher I had in elementary school, I could dictate anything. People could read it to me. It was just as valued as a form of literacy as traditional literacy was, and that was a big deal. You all are living in a Renaissance age with the technology you have to facilitate that. Third final thing around reading, right? I told you 3. Wade Blumen, respected, embraced. Speech to text, text to speech accommodations, walking through gum. Third thing, the power of relevance when it comes to reading. You know, I work with a lot of average young folks, folks who really struggle with reading. Many of them have never read anything in their entire life. And I've noticed a trend in my work with those young folks is that when they're 16 or 15 and a half, the first thing that they read is the driver's manual cover to cover, right? I've never read anything in their life before, but they'll read that driver's manual cover to cover. Why? They need it. They need it. It's relevant to their life. You know, we made a big mistake conflating reading with global intelligence, right? Reading is just a skill. That's an important skill. I mean to demean that skill. But nonetheless, it's a skill or a tool. And human beings use tools and skills when they're relevant to their life, when they help them navigate their environment or accomplish a task that they need to or they care about. And the same is true with reading, right? You know, my son now, who went from being in the 2nd percentile with reading, literally 2nd percentile math. Kid was in the 2nd percentile. Any other school in America, the kid is diagnosed and treated and shamed in some respect. Not any school, but many. He's now in the 98th percentile in reading. And a big part of that was relevance. He got to choose things he cared about that mattered in his life. You know, great research study at University of Chicago. You know, Chicago, as many cities, I imagine some of your cities do this. Chicago has a summer of reading program, right? And the goal is to make sure that summer learning loss is mitigated in the summer. Summer learning loss is a well-documented phenomenon that kids come back to school a couple months, sometimes a couple years behind, right? Especially when we become marginalized communities. So historically, summer reading at the city of Chicago was prescribed, right? Here was your list of books that you could take out. That's all that counted. And young folks, especially young folks from vulnerable backgrounds, did not engage in summer reading. 2 summers ago, they decided to flip it. Kids could pick any book they wanted, right? If you want to read about Michael Jordan, that's cool. You want to read about Minecraft, right on. You want to read a comic book, cool. Didn't matter, right? No hierarchy of what was good reading and bad reading. And they studied the impact of that. And on the most vulnerable learners, that summer, with choice-based reading programs, summer learning loss was cut by 75%. Because young people care about reading when it's relevant to their life. So I had folks like that in my life, you know. I had this guy I talked about this morning named Mr. Starkey, English teacher at Green Mountain High School down the hill there. And it was all about you choose what you want, what matters to you in your life, and help you become a reader that I still am today. Sometimes reading traditional books, sometimes listening to them. I make no distinction when it comes to literacy. They're both equally as valid. It's about engaging in ideas. Okay, so that was me and reading. And I appreciate the question, Lloyd. Thank you. Other ideas, other thoughts. Let's go right up front.
Hi, I'm Julie.
Hey, Julie.
DPS.
Right on.
My question is, I have a student, or had a student this last year that was very similar to the boy Juan that you discussed, and also to yourself anyway, because he is pretty much taking himself out of the school system.
Yeah.
So what was it for you that brought you back into public schools?
Let's talk about that a little bit. And tell me your name one more time.
Julie.
Julie. And what's your role at TPS?
7th grade English.
7th grade English teacher. Okay. So Julie, 7th grade English teacher, Denver Public Schools, did a lot of interesting, innovative work. I've been following the work of DPS for some time now. I'm partnered with the Times. Asked me kind of what were the things that helped me re-engage in school. She's asking from a very personal perspective of having a young person in her life. Sounds like Juan, sounds like me, 7th grade, who's on the cusp of disengaging, maybe disengaging for good. So let me come back to something I said a minute ago that I wanted to expand on, because it is relevant to this question of re-engagement and to keep going. So I said a few times today that I had a plan for suicide when I was 12 years old. And that was the worst part of my academic journey, obviously. And there was something in particular that really saved my life and empowered me to go back into school eventually. And I want to share that with you. And you know, it wasn't a sort of remediation intervention, it wasn't a technology intervention, it wasn't anything like that. But what really helped me was a videotape, you know, old school VHS videotape. And it was an interview that my mother had taken on Dateline. And she watched the interview, taped it, and demanded that I watch it once I left 6th grade. And the interview was with a young man who was, I don't know, like 23, 24 years old. And the guy went to Yale Law School, right? But the thing about this guy at Yale Law School was he couldn't read a word. And his mother, his mom, read every one of his law books to him. Do you have any idea the hope that image gave me? Now, let's be honest, sucks to be the guy's mom, right? I got that. I didn't say it was a hopeful message for mom, right? I said it's a hopeful message for me, you know? It gave me an image of a positive future. It gave me that message that things can get better, right? And when I talk to young folks around America, it's really that sense of hopelessness that I'm most concerned about. A sense that in their education, they're never going to be able to pass that standardized test. There's no hope for them, so why try? And you know what? That's a valid question, right? So we have to find ways to saturate those young people with an image of a positive future, that there is hope for them. And there's easy ways for y'all to do that, you know? I created this organization as an undergraduate in college called Eye to Eye. And Eye to Eye takes college kids. It's now a national organization run by my good friend and co-founder David Flink. It takes college kids with learning challenges and intentional differences, and it matches them with younger kids to give them hope for their future. It's a mentoring program, right? Inspiring. But you all can be a part of Eye to Eye philosophically. You don't have to join a chapter. Saturate young people with those images that they're okay. And you know, it's not the famous people who are the most inspiring. It's not. It really isn't. Doesn't do me any good to hear that, you know, Whoopi Goldberg is dyslexic. I mean, she is, but she's kind of too far away, you know, not close enough to my reality. Doesn't do me any good to hear that, you know, Tom Cruise was dyslexic, or was until Scientology cured him, you know. Like, that's not a cool message that you got to join a cult, you know, get beamed up by a spaceship, right? Like, that's not inspiring, you know. What matters the most is the 9th grader who spends some time with the 2nd grader. You know, the kid at a community college who spends an hour a month with some high school kids. A high school kid who spends some time with a kid in middle school. It's those internal mentoring networks. It's the testimonies that you can find on YouTube that you bring to people to help them imagine a different future for themselves, right? That's a powerful intervention that's within your capacity as an educator, as a district. It was an intervention that profoundly helped me re-engage in school, feel like I had a place, feel like there was hope for my future, that it can get better. So that would be one really concrete thing that I would recommend you do. Second thing that from my perspective is the key to engagement. Again, it's sort of something you can do on an individual level, is to flip that script that's so associated with deficits and problems of kids. You know, if you're a struggling kid, your whole life is about what's wrong with you. You know, and the message is that you're broken. And nobody goes off to live a successful life feeling broken, right? Yeah, I came across some research that recently. Young people who are targeted as at risk in their education, and young people who have IEPs, and obviously that group crosses over a significant amount. Those young people, for every one strength they can name, they name about 25 weaknesses or problems. They just don't know. You know, like I was a kid and Mr. R would ask me, hey Jonathan, what are you good at? What are you interested in? And I would say, I don't know, right? Or nothing, because my whole education had been in that deficit paradigm. You know, there's an institute called the Search Institute. Search Institute is an important resource to be aware of. It's a philosophical framework, but it's also a platform that you can engage in. A digital platform that allows young people to catalog a number of developmental assets, to define themselves through that lens of strengths, gifts, and talents, and then starts to build a connection between talent, interest, and pathway in their life. And it's a powerful tool to engage young folks with. It's the Search Institute as a framework, but also their digital platform is something that has a lot of merit to it in terms of moving me forward. Okay, so those are just some notional ideas. Hope for their future, a flipping of that deficit model with a very concrete tool and a way to achieve that. So I appreciate the question. Thank you. Other thoughts, comments? Yeah, go right there.
If you could design the perfect school for middle school youth, what would it look like?
For middle school young people.
For middle school youth.
For middle school me, yeah.
Physically and intellectually, what would the school look like? With an unlimited budget? Yes.
Yeah. so just a real world scenario. I love that. Jonathan Mooney in charge with all the money in the world, right? That's a nice vision. That's kind of a frightening vision, actually. But I appreciate the challenge. So tell me your name.
I'm Jessica.
Jessica. And Jessica, do you work in a middle school setting with a bunch of kids like me? I don't know how I guess that. And whereabouts in the grade stage do you do that important work?
I teach 7th grade reading and reading enrichment at TSST State.
Right on. And you've been doing that work for a long time?
8 years. Okay.
Well, it's important work. Thanks for being here. Thanks for the work that you do. So let's talk utopia for a moment, right? Which is always a good thing to talk about, because we should have a North Star. Even if that North Star, you know, is aspirational and something we may not get to in our lifetime, we should be holding on to. And the other reason that I so love that question is that we as a community need a North Star. You know, again, I believe so deeply in something that I said quickly this morning, which is that, you know, we're at a sort of fork in the road when it comes to the integration of technology and learning. It can be something that reinforces old school models, right? Or it can be something that challenges old school models and reimagines something new. And you all are the front lines of that, figuring out what does it mean to not double down on old school, but create the new school of the future. And that's such important work. So what is that? What does that North Star look like? Well, let's talk first of all from a pedagogical perspective. And I think that this is true because I believe in it and have seen it for the whole age continuum. But I think it's specifically true with middle school and middle school developmental norms. I mean, right now, I don't know what kind of middle school you work in. I know middle school models vary from being 6, 7, 8 or 7, 8, but regardless, they are a train wreck, right? I mean, if you could think about trying, at the HOP systems level, if you could think about a worse time in a kid's life that takes them from a nurturing environment where they were in small classrooms into a large environment that switched every single day, right in the middle of social anxiety and all of the social nerves that are emerging. It was something that I think many folks realize that we can do it different. LAUSD is only building K-12 buildings moving forward. And there's a movement afoot to really think differently about that middle school time. But the thing for me that is so challenging about the way that we think about middle school right now is that middle school, we go from being kid-centered in elementary school to content-centered in middle school and high school, right? You know, you're a first grade teacher, you teach all these kids, you have a different bunch of subjects. And you ask folks sometimes in middle school, what do they teach? Well, they teach their subject matter, right? And again, that's not a teacher's fault. That's not an administrator's fault. That's the way that we have structured our system. So I think those are some of the critiques that I would bring to bear. But from a pedagogy perspective, it's true across the continuum, so true for the needs of middle school students, is that problem or project-based learning is the time to engage with. I mean, these are young folks that are chomping at the bit to criticize their world, as I'm sure you know, to think about what could be better in their world, to be critical thinkers about what's happening around them. They're cognitively ready to do high levels of critical thinking, and they're right for a model that presents them with a problem to solve every day collaboratively. You know, I was at this middle school, I told you a little bit about Clark County School District. I was at this middle school the other day. It's a problem-based learning environment, and I can talk about the distinction between project and problem-based. It's a little bit of a distinction without a difference, but there are some important differentiating points. But I went to this middle school classroom. It was a mixed age group, which is something else I believe deeply in, of 6, 7, 8-year-olds. We had a science teacher paired with an engineering teacher, as well as a social studies teacher, and the entire class was prompted with one question of, what happens if I drop an egg in a parachute from the ceiling? Let's find out. And then the challenge of, how can we invent something to make sure that when we drop it, it won't break? And that approach had high levels of engagement. It had a profound integration and contextualization of high-level math skills, collaboration skills. It was fully mapped or reverse engineered around Common Core requirements on all those different disciplines. And it was a loud and chaotic classroom, which is the sign of true learning, right? When I see the quiet classroom, those concern me, you know? It's the kids questioning and yelling and talking about things. That's where engagement is happening. So the other component to that for me is a one-to-one model. Because what those kids were doing as they tried to figure out what happens when an egg falls and how they can mitigate the force of gravity, is they were charged to be researchers and scientists themselves. They were charged with looking up what are the laws of gravity. They were charged with researching the different components and physical properties of when things land and break. That was on them. They were owning their own learning. Now, we should not be intimidated by these devices. You know, the district I was talking about has the resources to do one-to-one, but your district doesn't even need to do that because kids are bringing them into the learning environment, right? And why not leverage those devices within a learning context? And that's what I saw happen. Now, at the same time, projects would be happening, and we would be doing individualized instruction, blended learning for direct academic content dissemination and skill building. And there are many schools that are models for that out there right now. You look at this place called Da Vinci Learning Academies in Southern California. Kids are spending most of the day, about 75%, on problems that are multiple age grouping, exploration and self-instruction, and facilitation with technology. And then they're spending 25% of the day working on the reading, working on the writing, working on the academic content that may get filled in a competency-based way. It's a powerful model that I believe in, that I hope my kids one day have a chance to go to. Now let me talk about high school, because I think when we get into the high school age, we have the same opportunity to do problem-based learning, blended with core instruction. But I think then we have a chance to do place-based learning, drawing upon expertises and experiences outside of the school building. You know, think about the number of opportunities for internships, experiences, after-school programs, faith-based volunteering that we can bring into an education and build a portfolio around. Let me give you a cool example of that and a technical resource to draw on in the future. So the Hive Learning Network, H-I-V-E, like Beehive. The Hive Learning Network is, from my perspective, one of the most innovative, next generation, tech-enabled learning institutions in the country. They came out of the work of the MacArthur Foundation and others, and their core mission was to figure out how do we ignite, accredit, for lack of a better word, and or bound place-based learning experiences. How do we ignite museums as places of learning? How do we ignite the library as a place of learning and not just checking out resources? How do we build learning labs with companies in communities? How do we do that? And they've partnered with the city of Chicago about 4 years ago to do the Summer of Learning. And the Summer of Learning was a digital platform in which young people choose and created a learning adventure. Boys and Girls Clubs, faith-based institutions, companies, all offered experiences that got them digital badges, right? That demonstrated competency and demonstrated mastery of some skill set. And it was a profound acknowledgement of the fact that learning happens not just in the school day, but it happens out there in the world, and it brought it all together. So Hive Learning Network, the Summer of Learning is going to launch its second iteration with a new platform that allows people from all around the world, not just during the summertime, but throughout the school year, to do place-based learning. So if I was running a high school, we would have that problem-based learning as our core model. We'd have blended instruction for the academic skills and the content, and we have place-based learning captured in a digital portfolio that brings it all together. That would be my North Star. Now, you know, is that feasible? The good news is there are many places around the country doing things just like that. That's something that is within the realm of possibility if we fight for it and if we stay committed to a reimagining of education as a community. Right on. Appreciate the question. Thanks so much. It's not every day that you get an unlimited budget to imagine education for the future, so I appreciate the opportunity to do so. Let's see what else we got. We got a few more minutes. Let me see if there's anyone in the back of the room. Don't want y'all to feel neglected back there. Y'all good? Okay. Sir.
So, I work after school for a
Yeah.
nonprofit. I teach kids for program. We have a lot of freedom, but freedom is also kind of scary. So what are your favorite tools for keeping yourself honest and making sure you're doing your job and you don't have like tests and stuff like that?
Yeah, that's a good game. Tell me a little bit about the after school program you're working.
So it's hopeful learning we teach program, the digital skills and that.
And it's part of an after school.
We're mainly in DBS.
Great.
So we run out donors. It's 4 days a week for 3 hours.
Great.
It's a big chunk of time you don't want to waste with those kids.
And you need to be honest about what metrics you're hitting.
Yeah.
And are you on track?
Exactly.
Yeah. And tell me your name again. I know we went outside. Sorry?
Tim.
Tim. Right on, Tim. So Tim, I think Tim raised a very specific question as it pertains to the work he's doing, but I think he raised also a big question that pertains to some of the conversation that we were just having a moment ago around problem-based learning. So Tim asked me, hey, I'm in an after-school environment that has a lot of flexibility to it. I want to keep myself honest, and I want to make sure that I'm delivering on some core academic goals or experiences. And I say that that's relevant not just to your experience, Tim, but also to the shift to project or problem-based learning, because we all have that challenge. We have the pragmatic challenge of how do we take the A experiment and show to the world, to principals and others, that we're hitting core outcomes. We all want to do that as professionals. We want to do that for kids, and so kids know what they're learning. And what does that alignment look like? Well, I'll tell you, for folks out there doing project or problem-based work, and you're doing that as well. There are a number of digital resources that allow you to take a project, map it to learning outcomes, contextualized to your state and to the Common Core. So let's take the Nevada example. The egg experiment. A team of teachers went through a platform. I'll tell you the platform's name in a second. I mentioned it before. And they mapped that project to the state of Nevada's requirements and to the Common Core requirements. And then the platform gave them feedback as they went along of whether they were hitting those core benchmarks, asking them for documentation about hitting those core benchmarks, and then gave them strategies for ways to align better with it. So it's a beta platform, and I will share with you if you email me invite-only link to play with it. It's a part of this larger platform called Thrively, which is like Thrive, just adding LY, which is really about passion-based learning. And they're moving into this idea of problem-based learning aligned to Common Core requirements and supporting teachers and knowing whether they're hitting those or not. It's a wonderful tool that's interactive and real-time and iterative. You go to it as you achieve your goals, modify your goals, learn from what you did, and it's a wonderful tool that I use in my own work with kids like Juan. That's a core part, because one of the things that we got to be honest about is as we move to problem or project-based learning, it's sometimes easy to not hold ourselves accountable to some of those core metrics, and that's a wonderful tool to do so. There are others that if you email me, I'll share with you and it's something to explore in that beta version and then elsewhere. So I appreciate the question, Tim. Thanks, man. Okay, we got time for about maybe 2 more, and then make myself available if you want to come and say hello, and then we'll go from there. Right up front, please.
We also work in the school environment.
Yeah.
I think one of the challenges that I was kind of facing this year was having to challenge and change their thinking to not have that unstupid mentality in the class and feel the only semi-positive space they have. Like, they don't have the home support. I know you mentioned a lot of your mother.
Yeah.
It's definitely very important, but how do you assess those kids that don't have that?
Yeah, and what's your name?
I'm Nicole.
Nicole. Nicole. So what do you teach?
I was middle school science and business.
Middle school science, and then young folks are reading new, and they have some challenges that they're struggling with, right? Outside of the classroom environment. And what can we do about that to support them? In that 48 minutes, right? 48 minutes, right? You got a hard gig, you know? Change your life, you got 48 minutes, you know? Nothing harder, nothing more important. So let me talk a little bit about that. First of all, I think having a construct to understand, especially in middle school, I see it emerge a lot. What's happening to young people who are experiencing failure and or pain in their home or community environment is important. And I think one of the most important constructs that I've come across that help me see myself differently, help me understand kids differently, and ultimately help me share a different view with a child or a young person was the concept of learned helplessness. Does anyone know the concept? For those of you that don't, we just talk about it briefly, okay? Because a lot of kids like me are called lazy. You know, middle school, that was the #1 word applied to me. I was lazy. And I don't really believe that about myself and about other kids. I believe I was two things. One, I was somebody who had learned helplessness. So let me just talk about that term for a second. So learned helplessness is a term that came from research by a social psychologist named Martin Seligman a long time ago. He did a set of experiments at Cornell University where he wanted to figure out what happens to organisms in pain. Do they die? Do they give up? What happens? So to answer that question, Martin Seligman and his team did a very famous experiment. They built a cage like this. They put a fence in the middle of the cage, and then they proceeded to put sort of electric shockers on both sides of the fence. And then they put a monkey in the cage. And the experiment had 2 stages. Stage 1, they would shock the monkey on one side of the fence. And it would hurt, and it would jump over to the other side. And it was safe there for a while. You know, it could be an hour, it could be a week, it could be a couple days. And then they would shock it on the other side. It would hurt, and it would jump over. And they did that for a while. And what they extrapolated from that experiment was that as long as organisms had a way out, you know, hope that it could not hurt. Not that a monkey has hope per se, but there was a safe place for it to be. We're persevering. We can be gritty and survive hard experiences. So then they did stage 2 of the experiment. In stage 2 of the experiment, they turned both the shockers on. So wherever the animal went, it hurt. No safe spot, right? So when I learned about that experiment in college, it vividly reminded me of school. Right? Let me explain the analogy, right? Because I would go to school in the morning and my foot would start bouncing and I would get sent to the hallway and shocked. And then I would jump over. And I would be in reading class. And we'd start reading out loud, right? And right before it was my turn to read out loud, I would raise my hand. Where am I going? The bathroom, right? March myself into the bathroom, praying to God in the bathroom that when I came back, I would be passed up. But lo and behold, surprise, surprise, I would come back from the bathroom only to discover that they waited for me, right? Another shock. Then I would go to the playground and I would hear, John, you're a spaz, you're a freak, another shock. Then I would go home and my dad would start up with, John, I don't have a retard in my family, something my dad would say quite a lot, another shock. And it was a lot like that month, you know? And it was an experience of pain in an academic context, in a social context with my friends, and then in a community context. And we all know, and you know, Nicole, viscerally, that many young people face even more challenges outside of school. They face dangerous neighborhoods, they face food insecurity, they face physical and emotional violence, right? So there's shocks. So the question is, to go back to Seligman's experiment, when both of the shockers were turned on, what happened to the monkey in the experiment? There's a lot of right answers, actually. Number 1 is it got angry, right? You ever seen any angry young people? Right? It's a natural response to pain. And it's very important, and I think this is something Nicole to be very practical with, is to acknowledge the legitimacy of that pain. You know, like, hey, it ain't right to be in the hallway, or it ain't right to have an abusive dad, or whatever it is, we should call it out and name it. Because it's not until we understand it that people can transform it, right? A good friend of mine, Roberto Rivera, who does this amazing program called Hip Hope, using hip-hop pedagogy to help kids imagine a different future for themselves. He likes to say that kids need to turn their pain into propane, right? Into a rocket fuel for themselves, and they can't do that until they have a name for it. So anger is a big one, right? Attempts to escape is another one, right? Kids ditch school, you know, they disengage, they attempt to escape using substances, right? Some I know a lot about in my own journey, right? Again, you should name that, give people a consciousness to what's underneath it. And then the third right answer is depression or withdrawal, right? Like if you're in pain all day long, you're not going to have energy. You're going to experience depression and anxiety about your circumstances. That's natural. That's normal. We should name it as such. And the last thing that happens before the animal dies, because if you continue to experiment, it will. The last thing that happens is it lays down and gets up. Right? It stops trying to jump back and forth. It's a phenomenon called learned helplessness. But the irony of the experience is so many kids who have laid down are kids who are called lazy, right? And I think it's really important to reframe that and to understand that for me, I couldn't survive what kids like Juan went through every day. That took resiliency and courage. I had this great middle school teacher I met in my travels, high school teacher actually, high school principal, and she told me the story where she said, look, every year at high school graduation, I get up there and I don't celebrate the top 10% of the class. That's not who I recognize, because for those kids, guess what? For the most part, school is a good thing, right? Those were kids who were rewarded and praised. She celebrates the bottom 10%. Because those kids showed up every day and worked hard. It was torturous work for them. And they showed up nonetheless, and she celebrated that and valued that. So I think understanding that those kids are kids with learned helplessness. There's community conditions that are driving that learned helplessness. And the more that you can be in your 48 minutes, and I know it's a big scope of work, to help kids navigate those community conditions, to give them referrals to counseling, referrals to social services, to be that connector to ways to change their context if their parents aren't doing it for them, which so many aren't. That's a role that you can play, something you can do. Now, the other thing you can do is you can tell kids what else is often underneath kids who are called lazy. So often they're considered learned helplessness, but what they're also kids who are intrinsically motivated, right? I mean, that was me, I was the intrinsically motivated kid. Y'all know that term? Let me share that term just for a second, right? There's two ways to be motivated, right? You can be motivated by things outside of you, extrinsically, or you can be motivated by things you care about. That's intrinsic motivation. I'll give you one of the best examples of intrinsic motivation I've ever seen and how it's misunderstood as laziness. I do a lot of these talks, right? And after one of my talks, dad came up to me. And I'll never forget, the dad had his son right next to me. His son was about 17 years old. And the dad said, hey, man, my son is lazy. What can I do? And I said, I don't know you guys, so I want to respect your perspective. So tell me, why do you think your son's lazy? What does that mean? And the dad went on to tell me about the school meeting, right? He wouldn't get out of bed, he wouldn't turn things in, he struggled with motivation. And I granted to the father that this kid really seems like he struggled with motivation. So then I turned to the young man and I said, hey man, tell me about your weekend. If you think you got a lazy kid, ask about the weekend, right? So I said, hey, what do you do on the weekend? And the kid said, well, I spend most of my day inside of my computer. The dad said, see, he's lazy. I said, well, hold up. And I said, what are you doing on that computer? And he said, well, I'm really into video games, and I've decided to learn how to design video games. And then I said to the young man, what are you doing with the video games you design? And he looked at me, and then he looked at his dad, because he never told his dad this. He said, I'm selling them to my friends, right? And this kid, who everyone called lazy, was spending 15 hours a day with high-level computer programming and entrepreneurial skills. He wasn't motivated by gold stars, by grades, by sticks and carrots. He was motivated by autonomy, mastery, and purpose, right? Those are the motivators of intrinsic motivation. Autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And the more that learning environments that we talked about in the aspirational sense a moment ago, the more that they drive and connect to those things, the more that kids can survive the bad stuff happening after school and can have an experience of feeling engaged and have one of the shockers turned off for them. Now, I don't want to be naive, You can, other folks here face the same stuff, you can do those things, right? Help kids tap into that pain, reframe it, you know, give them role models for a positive future, you know, help them figure out what's intrinsically motivating, but you got 48 minutes, right? 48. So it's important that we accept the limitations of what we can do. You know? It is. That's not to give up on a young person. We do what we can within the constraints that we find ourselves in, and if we don't accept that, folks don't make it. They burn out, right? And it's also to say that this ain't all on teachers. You know, one of the things I'm just so frustrated about in our national conversation is the way that educators are demonized in the media, the way that people think the solution to challenges in school environments is to just hold teachers accountable and to privatize educational environments. It's not the road towards change. We need to talk seriously about how, in an age of economic inequality, you can't divorce the social context kids find themselves in and academic performance, right? Things we can do. People need to invest in, city government needs to, state government, in building the conditions in neighborhoods that let people thrive. That's something we got to talk about honestly. So do the best you can in a flawed system with the constraints upon you. You will make a difference, but there is a time and a place to understand that it ain't all on teachers. It's an all hands on deck thing. Parents got to play their part. City government, systems got to play their part. And ultimately, it's only together that we can really create the conditions that help people thrive. So those are some of my thoughts. I appreciate the opportunity to share them. Thanks. Okay, let me do a quick time check here. I wanted to leave us about 15 or 20 minutes for some one-on-one dialogue. I saw one more hand though. I could probably dive into one more question, and then we can switch gears and have personal conversations. So it'll be our last question of the day.
Okay. So when you said that when teachers would ask you like, what are you interested in, and you'd say nothing or you don't know, like how do you, because I've had that happen with students especially, and it's like how you would then try and I will do like this now, do like this now, and you're really trying to connect and find that thing to give them some personalized learning, and they're not. But how can you reach them?
How do you break through that intuitive nothing, not good at anything, that long history of kind of deficit kind of model, especially if they're kids with IUPs, etc. How do we crack that nut? Right? That's what you're saying? Okay. What's your name? Chris, it's a good one for us to end on, Chris. I think it gets us to a real elephant in the room, which is this group of innovators, conference today, yourself included, you know, are trying to change a culture, really. A culture that has defined intelligence and skill in a certain way, and in some ways has defined what it means to be a normal learner in a certain way. And we're trying to work against that culture to bring in a personalized learning approach. And young folks are having a hard time with some of that cultural change, for the reason I just talked about. And so I want to end our time on just two ideas for you, okay? And they're embodied in stories, because I like to tell stories, as you can tell. And one is about the power of challenging the idea that there's a normal way to learn, and to have that be a part of what you do every day and building that culture and the efficacy of that. And the other is about building community around difference. So I want to talk about those two ideas separately. Let me start with the idea of challenging the idea that there's a normal way to learn and the impact that can have. And you know, I really learned the impact of that when I was an undergraduate in college. And I created this thing, which I told you about a moment ago, called Eye to Eye. And Eye to Eye takes college kids with learning differences and intentional challenges and matches them with younger kids, give them hope for their future, right? But it's also an initiative that's trying to challenge the idea that there's a normal way to learn. And Eye to Eye is all around the country now, you know, some spots here in Colorado. But when we started, there was only 5 of us. There were 5 third graders, 5 Brown students in a special education room sharing each other's stories. And I'll be honest, honest with you, when we started, I had no idea what we were doing, okay? It was a fake it till you make it moment, right? And we've all been there, you know? So I said, hey, let's just get some folks in the room, let's share our stories. And so I was paired up with this kid named Justin, and I shared my story with him, and there were 4 of the pairs. And about halfway through my time talking with Justin, I decided to take a break into my program, observe the other groups. And the first group that I got to was a Brown student named Kent Roberts, and a 3rd grader named Philip. And they were quite a pair to see. Philip was a really hurting kid. He had school phobia, so that meant that he hid under his bed every morning and begged his grandma not to make him go to school. He was so anxious about school that when I met Philip, he would rub his left eyebrow raw. He had no left eyebrow. And he was a hurt kid. And then he was paired with this Brown student named Kent Roberts. And Kent Roberts is a good friend of mine, so when I say this, it's a compliment, trust me. Kent Roberts is a complete freak show, okay? He's got a big beard down to here. He's got long hair down to his waist. The dude totally looks like Jesus, right? Like, get the guy some Birkenstocks, a staff, and like a loincloth, you know? And you got a Jesus impersonator going on, right? And so they were quite a sight to see. You had hurt little Philip and then Jesus-looking Kent, you know? And they were talking to each other. And I decided to go observe. And I got over to their little corner of the room. And when I got there, I heard Kent, who's usually a fairly soft-spoken guy. I heard Kent screaming at Philip. He was literally screaming at Philip. And what he was screaming was, Philip, if you learn one thing in eye to eye, you have to learn that normal people suck, Philip. They suck. What the? That's not what Jesus said. Come on now, I'm in a public elementary school. I think the cops are coming next, right? You know, I wanted to do Project Eye to Eye as my profession upon graduation, and there is absolutely no funding for an organization whose mission is to curse at children, okay? So I go home that night and I am livid. I am furious. I think he has ruined this program, and I call Kent on the phone, and I'll admit to you that I yelled at him for about 10 minutes. How could you say that? What were you thinking? Why did you say that? Kent didn't say a word. All he said was, towards the end of the call, it's true, and hung up. Right? So I'm thinking, maybe, just maybe, you know, water under the bridge. No principal was there. No teacher heard it. You know, right under the rug, you know. We've all been there. Wrong. Next morning, I get a call from the principal of the Fox Point Elementary School, Principal Mary Brennan, respectfully summons me to her office to discuss what transpired the day before at Eye to Eye. And I drive to her office, thinking of all the ways I can apologize to scar this 3rd grader. And when I get to the office, not only is it the principal, but it's Philip's grandma. Philip lives full-time with grandma, and if I've learned one thing in my brief life, it is do not mess with grandma, right? Because the moment I sit down, grandma stands up, she points at me, and she says at the top of her lungs, what did you do to my grandson? I said, nothing, it was that Kent guy. Hey, Jesus or not, right under the grandma bus, okay? Don't know him, he slipped in, never seen him before in my life, right? Philip's grandmother had tears in her eyes. She said, you know, for 3 years, from our home to school, my grandson's been in tears, begging me to turn around and go back. For 3 years, every morning the kid's been hiding under the bed and begging me not to make him go to school. But today, the day after Eye to Eye, my grandson was up early, waiting in the car, ready to go to school. What the hell did you do? My grandson. I looked around and I said, well, it was my good friend, Ken Roberts, right? And you know what, it was Ken. For the first time in Philip's life, he heard from Ken that he wasn't broken, that there's no such thing as a normal mind or body that we should aspire to, he heard that difference, paradoxically, is the norm. And it was transformative to him. So as we engage in a profound culture shift, because we gotta not be naive about that, right? For the history of human education, we've had to broadcast our content. Now, that's not because of bad teachers, because of limitations on the way that we can get information out there. And we're on the cusp of a new way that allows us to deeply personalize learning experiences, and that's a profound culture shift. It's not just about devices, it's not just about technology, it's about a culture where difference is paradoxically the norm, where there's no one normal way to learn. And that's a scary shift, right? It's a scary shift because in some ways it's easier to say, hey, do these 5 things and you're the normal kid. And if you don't do the 5, you're not. Hey, we're in the Wild West now, where kids like Juan could not do those things but build a successful adult life. We're in an age in which folks with autism and Asperger's can connect to the creative technology economy and do better in that economy than so-called normal kids, right? We're in an age in which reading, writing, and arithmetic is no longer the salient features, gatekeeper skills to success. It's a different set of skills, like resiliency and intrinsic motivation and creativity. So we're embarking on a big culture shift. And it takes time, but it takes leadership. And so I share all of that in the context of that question in particular because, yes, there's platforms in which you can have a young person do self-assessments to learn about their interests. Absolutely. There's things that you can do as an educator in which you look at things that has historically not been called strength, but you reframe them, right? You name those and you build a strength portfolio. That's a very positive thing to do to help pull out those strengths and talents that kids don't see. But even if we do those things, we're still shifting a culture. A culture that's entrenched but can be changed by leaders like you who wake up every day and say difference is the norm. Let's reimagine what it means to be a successful human being and how we achieve that. And let's celebrate the strengths, gifts, and talents that each and every young person has. Start your year like that. Say that at the middle of the year, say it at the end of the year, say it till you are blue in the face, say it to kids, to parents, say it to your colleagues, say it to board members, say it to principals and administrators, and that's driving real change. So I appreciate the question, thank you so much. I really appreciate y'all, your engagement with these ideas, your critical thinking about how we make them real, so inspired by you and everything I've heard today, and was really honored to just be a small part of it. I want to continue the dialogue, so y'all know how to do that, right? You can hit me an email. I want to say something about the email right now, which is, other people don't read it, so you can feel free to write personal things. Your students can. I'm the only one that reads it or responds. I will respond. It will be horrifically misspelled, so let it go, okay? It'll be all good. Be able to figure it out, you know? You read between the lines. The other thing I want to say is often the most common question I'm asked on email and after I speak is Jonathan, will you come home with me? And that's usually to speak to people's children or their classrooms. Not always, you know, but it's usually. It's something that I you know, love more than anything I do is to spend time in schools, talking to kids, and you know, we bend over backwards to make it happen for people who write and want it to happen. We Skype in, you know, no budget, low budget, we put you on a list, we write grants for it, you know, whatever it is. So don't be shy about that. That's all I wanted to say. You know, write me, no matter where you are, and hopefully we're going to make it happen in the future. So Jonathan Mooney, JONATHANMOONEY. That is at me, which is me.com. And then you've got Facebook to say hello and figure out where I'll be speaking and join a pretty vibrant community of people thinking differently about learning in the 21st century. Thank you all so much. Come say hello if you have a personal question. Then I got to make my way back to Denver and then back to my wonderful family. Have a wonderful rest of your conference, okay? Thank you.